If you find you're cruising along and then realize that you've gone off, you can always unpick back to your last definite point, which is usually where you're connecting stocking stitches, and have another go, because with the waist yarn on both sides you're entirely safe. That's why we only remove it at the I-cord edges. We can remove the rest of the waist yarn in a minute. I've got one more stitch to go here. I've completed this stocking stitch. This is my final purl bump, and then my other I-cord is going to have to be joined in the contrast colour. So I'm finishing with my brown yarn here. Now I've got to match my edge, and I realise that I have an issue here. This row is finishing in the purple and this row is in the brown. So if I put either the contrast or the main in there, I'm going to get two rows of one colour. So what I can do is remove the last row of I-cord with the yarn that's got the tail attached, and I have 3 visible Australian cousin stitches. So this piece and this piece will comprise the first stitch of the I-cord, and I can go back to working with the tail that I've sewn across the rest of the row. So from this position here, which is into the I-cord, I can take that around here, completing and tidying up that blue stitch. And I'm going to put my needle into the next one, and I'm going to start picking away the I-cord stitches. I need this piece and that one to make that stitch. So I've done 2 columns now of the I-cord. Back into the stitch I came from, the side of the next one, pick this away, and now I'm into my final I-cord stitch. Back in there, and we are done. So I'm just going to remove the waist yarn from the I-cord stitches, and check again, everything's matching. Now we can remove the waist yarns from both sides. The final waist yarn should come out quite easily, apart from where we may have snipped it, just by picking back. And again, we check. And the first waist yarn, unless you put a slippery quick release thread in there, is better removed by snipping and picking it out stitch by stitch. There's our last bit of waist yarn. And now let's take a close look at what we have achieved. So apart from my join in my wool, my I-cords match, my cables match, and I have a seamless, perfectly grafted piece of knitting. All that remains now is to take the ends to the private side and tidy things up. This isn't a graft for your first practice, but start with stocking stitch, then practice grafting across a cable, and you'll become quite skilled at it. And it does make a very useful hat band, sock cuff, wristlet. It's a really useful skill to master perfect grafting. This is where I changed from one piece of brown yarn to the next, so I'm going to link it at the back of the work just by crossing them around each other, and then darn them in opposing directions, and no one will be any the wiser. And ends are darned in. Some have been hidden up inside the I-cord, one duplicate stitch and then hide them in the I-cord, and there is our beautiful seamless piece of knitting.